Welcome to Under the Microscope Podcast. I'm your host, Jenny Germano. Thanks for joining me today, and welcome to episode 1. I'm really excited to be launching this podcast. I'll talk a little bit about my background in a second. I wanted to just give a brief overview of what I'm going to talk about today. The name of this episode is called Getting Ready to Get Ready. This is step 1. These are all the things that you need to be thinking about while you're doing research in what state that you want to launch in, what type of business that you're going to be launching in the cannabis industry, specifically what type of licensed cannabis operation are you looking to open. I'm just going to go over a couple important areas that you should be thinking about becoming this new operator in this emerging market. This also could be helpful even if you're an existing operator, if you're looking to expand or leave a market. That's what we're going to talk about today. A little bit about my background. I've been working in the cannabis industry since 2009, where I got my start working in vertically integrated cannabis operations from 2009 up until 2014 from medical cannabis facilities, and then also through the adult use market, which started in 2014 here in Colorado. In 2015, I founded my company, ICS Consulting, where I started to expand nationally into other states as early as 2016. I started getting into Michigan market, Maryland, and just started slowly expanding. On a national scale, I have been working for almost a decade now as a consultant in the cannabis industry. This year, I'm going to be celebrating 10 years in business, which is really exciting for me. The topic is getting ready to get ready. This is for cannabis operators looking to come into a new market or a business person looking to open a licensed cannabis operation somewhere in the United States. It could be in an existing market or it can be in a new emerging market. These are going to be important tips and topics that you should be thinking about as an operator or as a soon-to-be new operator in the market. The one thing I want to talk about is research. Research is really important in this space, as it would be for any business. Anytime that you're going to open a business, you want to do research. Why are you opening this business? What's important to you for your business? What business model are you going to be going after? A couple things to think about and to explore is first, what type of facility do you want to operate? Do you want to open a dispensary? If you want to open a dispensary, why? Why are you choosing to open a dispensary? If you're going to do a cultivation, why are you going to open a cultivation? Do you like growing? Do you have experience growing? Is it something that you've always wanted to do? And then manufacturing. If you're going to be opening a manufacturing facility, why do you want to do this? Is that your background? Were you manufacturing foods or other products prior to the cannabis industry? Are you like myself? I spent 23 years working in the restaurant industry, in commercial kitchens, hotels, restaurants, catering. And maybe you have a background like myself where you like working with recipes and you like making things and creating consumption products for the consumer market. Or maybe you want to get in the cannabis industry, but you're not sure. Maybe you just want to do transport. And then your clients are going to be business to business. You're not going to be B2C like a dispensary, but you're going to be doing delivery for these vendors. So let's say you're going to go to the manufacturing facility and pick up all the packaged product that has passed testing that the dispensary had ordered. And then you're going to be transporting that product to that dispensary. I also would like to mention that this is not going to be very state specific. This is for everyone that could potentially be watching in any state. I don't really want to narrow down too much. I might bring up specific states or things going on. I want to hit broad here because there's different licenses across the country and there's different rules and regulations on who can do what and who can have a transporter license or who can be a testing facility. And there's also limitations and caps on licenses. Here are the things I should be thinking about when I'm getting ready to get ready to start a business in the cannabis industry as a plant touching business. Research. It's so important to do, or I like to call it recon. Think about what are the different license types. If you don't grasp what these licenses are, go and visit these locations. Now, I know that's not going to be easy for every license type, but you can go to a dispensary. If you do not have dispensaries in your state, you can go to a neighboring state where it is legal. Depending on where you're at, you can go anywhere from Ohio to Michigan to Missouri to New Jersey, New York. You can go to all these places and go into a dispensary to get a good idea of what they look like. Medical can be a lot more challenging because you have to have a medical license. It's not just an ID and getting in like an adult 21 and up. But you might be able to talk with that dispensary, and depending on the rules and regulations, they might be able to bring you in on a visitor badge to give a tour. So that's another really important distinction you need to make. Am I interested in the medical market? Is my state only going to allow us to do medical? Or I want to be in a state where it's adult use. I'm not interested in participating in the medical market. There's a lot of questions and a lot of research you have to do to get the answers to these questions that you're going to ask yourself. So I think it's totally important to go to another state and visit these facilities and do these tours and meet with an operator who's willing to meet with you and talk about these things. You're really there just to do the research. Why do I want to open a dispensary? What's the investment going to look like? Are you just doing this to make a bunch of money and then sell the company in 5 years? Or is this something that you want to do for the next 10, 15 years and you want to build a company? Maybe you want your children to come and take it over and this is going to be a family business, or maybe this is just going to be an investment. It's different for everyone. Some people, this is just an investment, or they're building a portfolio and they're going to sell off their investment. These are all really important questions and thoughts to go over and review on what you want to do. Another thing for about doing research is, besides talking with existing operators and doing tours, is listening to podcasts and webinars. There's all kinds of wonderful information. There's lots of good podcasts out there that just have all kinds of broad topics around cannabis, from consumption, or especially around the financial side. You'll find some really good podcasts about raising capital, the market, and things going on nationally. Definitely go do your research and listen to some podcasts, get on some webinars, and get all the information you can. Also, the state websites. There's lots of videos, depending on where your state is at. Maybe your state doesn't have their website up yet. Maybe there's not a lot of information, but you can always go look at your neighboring state and go see what their website has, just to get used to the verbiage or the language, or just to give yourself some more awareness about these terms that maybe you've not heard before. And once again, I want to remind everyone, this podcast is for people who are looking to get into the cannabis industry. These are brand new people, so you might not even understand what these terminologies mean. And that's the whole point of doing research and becoming a sponge and absorbing all this information. If you're in a state that has nothing going on, there's no framework and there's no information, is that you want to look to other states and see what's going on. Another way to get more information, let's just say your state is a little bit further ahead and there is some stuff on the website and it was passed, it was voted in during one of the November elections, or maybe it came through the legislative session in your state and what's coming down the pipeline, and there's some ordinances coming through and some not heavy regulatory framework. They still have to build it, but they're in the middle of the process. You can attend as many meetings where the public is allowed to attend to get that information, which will be really helpful. You can also talk with lobbyists. You can attend any public meetings, maybe something that city council might be hosting some local meetings and they're drafting ordinances. You have to remember there's going to be state and local. There's going to be the state regulations, and there's going to be all the little towns and cities and municipalities. They're going to have to get together and they're going to have to say, are we going to allow cannabis in our town or city? And if we are, we need to draft ordinances. We need to come up with a application process for how we're going to be accepting these applications. We need to have some kind of structure, a framework. When people go to apply, they know what to do. They create that at the state level, and they're going to be creating that at the local level. Getting involved early on, that's what I would do 100%. I would start building relationships with the city clerk, especially if I'm in a small town, right? And they're unsure if they want to do this. I would be working with everyone that I could on the local level to say, hey, here's why I think you should do this, and do research. Go look in other states and other small towns, maybe who decided, like in Colorado, some of them waited like 10 years, but maybe you can go into Michigan where it's a little newer, and you could say, hey, these municipalities decided to get on board 5 years later and they missed out on the tax revenue. Most certainly in Colorado, these towns that waited 10 years definitely missed out on some of the tax revenue opportunities. They're a little late to the game, but there's still opportunity no matter when you show up. So it's really important you can get involved. You can go as deep as you want and get involved as you want. Getting involved at the local level, the state level, those are all ways to get information. You can get involved in the legislative session. You can lobby. You can work with your legislators. There's all different ways to get this moving in your state. Another thing you should be thinking about is if they have the ordinances and rules and regulations and you're like, hey, I own property. I hear this a lot where they want to get in the industry. They want to apply for some licenses because they have property. And they own this building, or maybe they own some farmland, but that local municipality is not going to be allowing cannabis. What are you going to do? Here it is. You have this building that you already own, or you have this property that you already own, and you're thinking, oh, that'd be great for a grow or maybe a manufacturing facility or a dispensary, but yet it's not going to be within the zoning. That's another reason why it's really important to foster these relationships early on with city council members or the city clerk or the legislative branch in your state, just to see if there's a way to get them to open up to wanting to do this, to bring it into their town. Because typically the state is really not the issue. They usually have the application process on a good lockdown. It's usually the smaller towns. They really need the help and the support with building out these regulatory frameworks because they just don't know. And a lot of times they just adopt what the state's doing. And maybe they sprinkle in a couple ordinances. It could be like operating hours or stuff around advertising and signage. The next one I want to talk about is access to funding and capital. One of the things you should be thinking about, and if you're a year out from being operational, it's good to start thinking about funding and capital. You do not want to be thinking about this 6 months before you think you're going to be opening. In some cases, depending on where you're at, I know people have done it in a year, right? But that's not going to be in a new emerging market. I'm talking existing marketplaces like Colorado. I know people have opened in a year, and that's from license application all the way to opening day, including the build out. And it's a very fast-paced environment. Not every state it's going to be like that. You want to be thinking about money. Where's the money coming from? How much money do I need? I would say really just understanding the amount of money you're going to need for every phase. And this can be challenging if I'm brand new and I have no context. I've never done anything in this industry. I'm a new business person getting in and I have no idea what I need for every phase. I would say that would be very challenging. You want to make sure that you're working with the right people and that you're not being taken advantage of, especially if you have to raise capital and you're not self-funding. A lot of mom and pops that I work with are self-funded, where somebody in their family gives them half of the investment, or they take it out of their life savings, or maybe it comes out of some 401k, or someone's taking money out of an investment that they've had, and they're investing this money to get this business open. It's really important to know, what am I going to need? What's it going to cost me pre-application? Am I going to buy a property? Am I going to rent a property? The money to pay the attorney. You need to have a really good attorney. The cost to submit the application to the state and the local municipality. All the licensing fees. If you're going to be working with a consultant, what that fee looks like. And it goes on to the build out, working with the general contractor. Are you going to be retrofitting an existing building, or are you going to be building from the ground up? What's that going to cost? There's a lot of different phases, and there's also getting through your inspections. I always say you should have contingency. For example, if I'm going to go buy a house and I hire somebody to help me demo and remodel the house, right? And they say, it's going to cost you $30,000 to remodel your house. We're talking existing building, but they say you need to have a $15,000 contingency plan for when we open up the walls and all these things in your old house that we're remodeling in case we find issues with like plumbing or electrical. Maybe there's water damage. Maybe there's termite issues. There could be so many different things that happen with an existing building. Maybe there's mold or something, that's going on. Maybe there's issues with the foundation. Because if you take an existing building, you're going to have to go in and fix it. You're going to have to get inspections. You're going to have to pass these inspections. There's so many things that can come up. There's so many things that can come up with getting to these building inspections, not just these cannabis inspections. I'm not a general contractor, but I've done enough of these projects to know that things come up almost all the time. You want to have contingency, extra money for emergencies when things come up. You should have the same thing in cannabis. You should have some type of outlet, or here's my backup plan. I'm not going to touch this money. I know it's there. And if I have to tap into it, I'm going to tap into it. That's just something to think about. If you have investors, you absolutely are going to have to tell them how every penny is going to be spent. If you're getting investors, they're going to want to know where it's going. You have to talk to people and you have to figure out your cost analysis. Here's how much the POS system costs. Here's how much packaging is going to cost, or the consultant. Here's all of our fees. You're going to come up with those numbers and you're going to figure out what you're going to need for each phase. Top 5 issues you can expect that you could run into trying to get operational. Running out of money. I see a lot of people run out of money all the time in the cannabis industry. These are brand new operators looking to get operational, and they didn't have a backup plan or enough funding, or something came up and the money went somewhere else, which then took it away from something else. Project delays. I would say in my 10 years of consulting across the United States on these projects, I have never yet to this day had a single client or operator or been on a project where they actually met their timeline. Doesn't happen. I don't know what to tell you. There's so much out of your control that if you say, I want to open on 4/20, it just doesn't happen. Things get pushed back. Something happens on the build. Something happens with the funding. Something happens with the state and the licensing process. It can happen on a local level. There's so many moving pieces involved in the licensing process, and then getting operational and winning the license, and then all the next steps, that you just cannot control all the things that possibly can come up. They can delay you by a couple days. They can delay you by a week, and they can delay you by a month. I've been part of projects where they got delayed a whole entire year. There's just a lot of different things that come up, and I'm not trying to overwhelm it all right now, but I'm trying to really give an idea of the reality. And I talk about that a lot, is reality versus the cannabis industry bubble. There's a lot of times people are in an altered reality around opening these operations, and it just all this work and sweat and tears and overwhelm just to get the license. I always tell people the application phase to win the license is the easiest step in getting operational, and getting open and the build out, getting to the opening day is really the journey. And then once you get open, and then maintaining and staying in business, customer acquisition, employees, products, like compliance, regulatory changes, regulatory inspections, all of this is a constant challenge. It doesn't stop once you win the application. I always like to talk about reality versus this altered reality. and bringing people into more of, here's the truth. It's really important to have that information to digest, to take with you when you're thinking about all these things. Running out of money, project delays, build up costs, go up all the time. Something comes up and all of a sudden the money, that $100,000 that you had allotted for the build out is now $150,000, and then it's $200,000. And now all of a sudden you're pulling money out of the project. Essentially, let's just say if you're a dispensary, and what if you end up pulling the money out that you're going to be using to pay for your inventory to get operational? And now you can't have a full dispensary of inventory for your grand opening because you ran out of money, or you didn't have as much money, or the money that you had planned to go here and there ended up having to go to the build out and you're not even operational yet. Another issue that I see that can happen is not enough inventory in the market. So if you're like a really new market, and I'm going to talk about the different types of markets later on in this podcast, but let's just say we're in a new emerging market and not everyone's open yet. People are still getting licensed, and it's like, almost seems like it's taking 2 years, right? For everyone to get licensed and to get operational and to get product, to get the supply chain built up. It seems like it's just taking like forever to get through that. So you can have challenges with the supply chain and having your shelves full. Or not only that, but what if you're cultivation? We all know you have to build the grow. And then once you get the grow, then you have to get the plants in there. And if you're growing from seed or clone, oh my gosh, it's going to be 6 months before you're harvesting. It's not like you're going to all of a sudden have a harvest in 2-3 weeks to supply the market. The grows have to start growing, which it takes them a while. And then the manufacturers are waiting on the grows for their first harvest so they can buy product, right? And so they're waiting on that. They finally get the product, and then the manufacturing companies that have to manufacture the product, they have to package the product. It has to pass testing. Meanwhile, the dispensaries are kind of waiting for product to hit the market because they're waiting for the grow to grow it and pass testing. They're waiting for the manufacturers to turn it into the product, and then that's got to get packaged and tested. That all has to happen before it can even hit the shelves. So lots of delays that can happen in any of that process. That would be for a brand new market. Now, if you were in Colorado opening a new business, you have so much to choose from in that entire market. You're not going to have that supply chain issue. I would say lawsuits is another delay. This is not going to happen in a mature market. I would say lawsuits pop up in the emerging markets. For example, there could be application rounds and something happened where maybe people who applied felt there were discrepancies in how the applications were scored. Maybe they felt the lottery system wasn't fair, or maybe they thought there were too many barriers to entry for people and that only people with a certain amount of money could get into the cannabis industry and open these businesses. There's a huge bag of reasons why people sue when it comes to this application process. But I've seen it in a lot of markets, which is why I think a lot of these places are moving to lottery-based applications instead of merit-based applications. Lawsuits where they're suing the local municipality or they're suing the state over the application process to win. We can see a lot of these, and things just get tied up forever. I think it was Illinois. I felt like it seemed like it lasted forever, where the application process was in 2019, where people were winning applications. Obviously, what happened in 2020 slowed things down. It just seemed like it took people 3 to 4 years to even get going in the Illinois rec market. We know there were lawsuits in Missouri, lawsuits in Alabama, in the medical market. At the end of the day, everyone is dumping a lot of money to get operational. And I understand why people are suing. Some of these people are putting in their entire life savings to win these applications, to get a license to start this business. And so lawsuits are a huge delay that happens. The next topic I wanted to talk about relating to getting ready to become a cannabis operator. Hire an experienced cannabis attorney. I would like to say there's nothing wrong with a business attorney helping you get your business set up, or maybe you have a family attorney. That's fine. I like working with all kinds of attorneys, but I specifically like working with cannabis attorneys. And there are law firms that do all kinds of things, intellectual property, licensing deals, and they service all the markets. And then they have a cannabis sector in their firm. Perfect. You just want to make sure that there's an attorney or there's some part of the firm that addresses cannabis specifically. It's good to have an IP attorney if you're coming up with the product, or maybe a software or something where you need a really good intellectual property attorney. They don't necessarily have to be from cannabis. When it comes to cannabis operations and these license applications, I think having an experienced cannabis attorney is really important to have on the team. You want to do your research. You want to find an attorney that's the right fit for you. The next thing I want to talk about before I jump into the other topics is vetting. So you're getting ready to become this cannabis operator. We're in 2025 right now. Vetting is extremely important. It's very easy to be taken advantage of in the cannabis industry, just like any industry. I would say in the entire US market, you could go into any type of industry and you could potentially get taken advantage. It's not just a cannabis industry thing. It happens a lot, but it also happens a lot in other industries. I just don't want to peg it down to be like a cannabis industry thing. I think as a business owner, it's very important to vet who you're working with, to vet your general contractor, to vet your consultant, to vet the attorney, and do your research. I always tell my clients, you want to talk to 3 different people. For example, a dispensary. If you're going to pick a point of sale system, you should demo anywhere from 3 to 5 point of sale softwares. If you're looking for a CPA, you should talk to at least 3 CPAs and find out, get a bid, their quote, how do they do it? What's it look like? What's the value? What are the benefits? All those things. You should do that with every part of your business. Even when you're talking about the supply chain, vetting is really important to do your research, and you can do this ahead of time, right? You're pre-licensed, pre-operational, thinking about doing these things, and you're mapping out your process, your business plan, what you want to do. You can start researching consultants or a general contractor. There's a lot of people who actually call point of sale software companies all the time, and there's not even legal cannabis in their state yet. And they're just thinking about, hey, I want to get one of these licenses. I'm looking at a point of sale software. You can start as early as you want to start doing research and vetting and talking to people and coming up with a plan. I just wanted to throw that in there. I think it's really important to be responsible in that way, because I think when bad things start to happen or things don't go right or things come up, it just can become challenging, and you might want to save yourself from some of that pain. I know things do come up during the process of going from application to operation, but vetting and getting with quality people and spending the money to have quality people is going to save you so much money in the end, and so much heartache and pain than trying to go the cheaper way. It's like hiring the cheapest plumber can end up costing you so much more if you had just gone with a plumbing company that had a really good referrals and it was well vetted. We all know that cutting corners and being cheap doesn't always work out. A couple other things I wanted to bring up was state and local. Let's just say you are in a state and they're talking about working on a regulatory framework. We're getting ready to put out these applications. Here's the date. Here's when you can submit. And here's when we're no longer taking submissions in our portal. So it's important to get that information so you can set up a schedule and a timeline for when you need to get things done. A lot of times the states will be very helpful and have really good Fact sheets, really important to check the facts sections or the Q&A sections on state websites. There's so much valuable information that you can get. I've been really impressed with the states out there. They're putting out a lot of support documents and guidance documents, a really good application packet with instructions, checklists you can work through to check all the things off. I would read every single thing that's out there that you can. You're going to get a lot of information from that. Don't wing it. That's why it's important to have a really good team in place or working with a good cannabis attorney that's done these applications, as well as maybe a consultant or whoever's working with you that can help guide you in the right direction. The next topic I wanted to talk about, describing the different types of markets and licenses that are out there. Right now, we have existing mature markets, Colorado, Missouri, Michigan, Washington State, Oregon, California, Nevada. They've been operating for a while now. Their markets are maturing, and it's very different than a new emerging market. Alabama could be a new emerging market. They recently had the medical application round, and also we could look at New Jersey and New York as new emerging markets. It's not saturated yet, and they're not having the issues that the mature markets are having with saturation, or I like to call it industry course correction, where the states are adjusting to the entire national market with more states coming on board for licensing for medical and retail cannabis. People leave those states and go into new emerging markets because those mature states are now saturated. Everybody's in a different phase. Colorado or California and Michigan, we see a lot of distressed assets right now that are for sale, a lot of mergers and acquisitions that are happening. People are leaving. MSOs have left Colorado and they're just focusing on new emerging markets, or even MSOs have had to cut back on what markets that they're in. Like some of them are left Colorado. There's different types, temperature, where the market is. Some markets are hot and some markets aren't so hot. I believe there's always opportunity in any market. It just depends on what you're looking for. One of the things I wanted to talk about, so there's lottery versus merit-based. There's markets where it's just going to be lottery only. You're applying for the application, everybody pays the same fee. That application then goes into a lottery where they just do a drawing. I've seen it too, where it's been divided up into 3 lotteries, and they pick from that lottery and they announce the winners. There's also merit-based, and merit-based is based on scoring for the application and who has the highest score, and that's who wins the application. It used to all be merit-based, and then all these lawsuits started happening in all these states. The new states that started coming online said, hey, we don't want to do merit-based anymore. We don't want to be sued. We're going to do lottery. But I also think states that do lottery get sued too. Sometimes there's no way to avoid lawsuits in a state. I forgot to mention the micro businesses. You have these commercial businesses, and maybe they grow like 1,800 up to 50,000 plants. And then you have a micro business or a micro license, where this is like really mom and pop. I've worked with a lot of commercial operators that are family-owned businesses. They're buying directly from these commercial operators. But in some states, they're coming up with these micro licenses where they can grow 500 plants. They're not going to do the 1,800 plant tier, and they can only do micro to micro. They can't work or buy from the commercial market, and it's micro business to micro business. So you have to think about, what license type works best for you. Do you want to do lottery, or do you want to go in a state that's merit-based? Do you want to be a micro business, like 500 plants? That's fine. I'm okay with 500 plants. I'm okay with being a small boutique dispensary. Maybe there's a restriction. You can only be 1,000 square feet. I'm okay with that, right? I don't need to have a 5,000 square foot dispensary, and I don't need to have 6 point of sale stations. So really, once again, what is it that you're looking for? what fits your model and what you're looking to implement, or what type of operator are you looking to be. I also want to talk about opportunities in existing markets. I think this is so important. I really think there's a lot of good opportunity in these other markets. California, there's a lot of distressed assets for sale, even in Michigan, but I'll talk about Colorado because I do a lot of work here in Colorado. And one of the things that I'm seeing, what's happening here, and this is happening in other states, not just Colorado, we have these mature markets that have been going 10 years, 8 years, 7, 6 years. And what had happened was originally these small towns or smaller cities said, hey, we're going to opt out. We're not interested in cannabis right now. We're not interested in medical, or we're not interested in retail. And we're going to watch and we're going to see what these bigger cities do. We're going to watch and sit back and see what happens in Denver, or we're going to see what happens in Boulder. And then we'll decide if we want to come to the party. What's happening now is that all these little towns maybe have 12,000 people, 30,000, 10,000 people. They banned cannabis, right? And now all of a sudden, here we are in 2025, and they're saying, all right, we're ready to come to the party. We're ready to collect some marijuana tax, and we're ready to have dispensaries. We're not even going to do grows or manufacturing. Or we don't want dispensaries, and we're only going to allow a testing facility and manufacturing facilities. So that's what we're seeing now in these mature markets, are these little pockets that are opening up to new businesses, new licenses where they never had a license before. And that's happening. I find that to be exciting. I think it's good for the marketplace. The market, no matter where you go, things are going to constrict and expand. I think that's just natural. I think it's always going to be in the up and down journey in the cannabis industry. It's never just going to be like everything's amazing and life is so easy the whole entire time. That is just never going to be the cannabis industry. I think it's exciting that these mature markets have these things going on, and it's a good opportunity for somebody to come in and get a license for a cheaper price because the market constricted. People are selling off distressed assets. They're looking to get out. They've been at it for 10 years. They don't want to do it anymore. They're tired. They're exhausted. Fresh new people are coming in that are excited and coming in with new concepts and things that other people haven't done, or they're coming in with new business skill sets into mature markets, and they're crushing it. I'm meeting people who are doing amazing in these markets and apparently are mature and saturated, and they're being successful. That's why I think there's still opportunity in mature markets. Maybe you want to go into a mature market, and it depends. Do you want to get through a licensing process that takes a year? Or are you okay with it taking 2 to 3 years? Is it important that you're in your home state because you want your whole family involved? There's so many things that could be a possibility. Those are some things to think about when you're considering becoming an operator, and part of your plan and different ideas that I want to throw out there, that there's still opportunities in existing markets. In closing, I want to thank everyone for joining me today. I really appreciate it. This is episode 1. I haven't done this in a while. It's always a little out of my comfort zone. I'm so happy to be sharing my knowledge. And basically, the idea is to go under the microscope and to go down the rabbit hole with some of these operational topics, things that people aren't talking about. For me, I'm thinking about the operator. If I was an operator and I was brand new and I had no idea what was going on, what are the things that I'm thinking about? What are the things that I'm worried about, or things that I don't know because I don't know it yet? That's my goal, is to really provide context for these new people coming in the cannabis industry. The cannabis industry is going to be thriving for a long time because I feel like there's going to be opportunity for small operators, medium-sized operators. There's always going to be MSOs. There's always going to be corporate cannabis, but there's also going to be small business. And I think small businesses are really important to the cannabis industry. I'm a small business and I work with small businesses. And it's still important for people to come out into these states and to open these operations and to get licensed and to do it compliantly and to have a plan in place. So thanks for joining me today. I really appreciate it. Stay tuned for my next episode, working with an attorney and setting up your business correctly and making sure that you have all the things that you need. If you would like more information or you would like to reach out to me, you can visit my website, icsconsultingservice.com. You can also visit my YouTube channel. It's at Under the Microscope with Jenny, and as well as on my podcast channels.